Today we are learning basketball with Chip Williams, doing some NBA draft scouting and film breakdowns for the NBA at Chip Williams Jr. on Twitter, at The Second Jump on YouTube. You can check out his work there. Really, really great coverage and just perspective on the Memphis Grizzlies. And that's really what we're going to dive into and do a little tribute pod for what Jaren Jackson means to Memphis today, along with some potential 2026 NBA draft gems to round out the pod. First things first, how you doing today, Chip?
I'm doing great, Ryan. I really appreciate you having me on, the opportunity. You asked if I wanted to talk about Jaren, and I was like, well, man, I didn't know you were into like 30-hour podcasts, but yeah, sure. I'll talk Jaren as long as you want to.
That was perfect. Michael Jordan got a 10-part Netflix series. It's time learning basketball. Got a little 10-part Jaren Jackson series.
That's
just
right.
From his come up, because that was actually, funny enough, the first big article and just first article I wrote about for Switch Theory, the website, which is, this is a Switch Theory podcast, learning basketball, was about Jaren Jackson, and just it was called The Actualization of Jaren Jackson, and just kind of a similar idea of just looking at his long-term development path, from, him as a prospect, this unicorny, toolsy, rare skill set of a prospect, to see him actualize into defensive player of the year, and then all-star level scorer when Ja went down, doing it on both ends. And there has been some fluctuations with the team and his play, and he's one of those guys that is so good that people love to jump on the 3 or 4 criticisms about his play, but just never actually just sit there in awe of what Mo Wagner was talking about after the game, his incredible touch at the rim to go with his just, fundamental footwork, that quick shot release, the shot blocking instincts, just all these incredible unicorn type prospects that, very rare guys actually have. And, with see if Utah kind of unlocks that two-way impact again. But, we covered a little more of the Utah side and the trade details with Charlie Cummings earlier this week. So we're going to go more on the Memphis side of things. What before we get into what he meant to Memphis, what really stood out to you about just his development from, as early as you saw him to the potential to actually being one of these guys that lives up to a unicorn potential, when there's guys in his own draft that didn't quite get there.
No, absolutely. I have been a Jaren guy for a very long time. I remember in high school, I thought that he was this kind of intriguing, all right, is this like a 3-and-D center? Is that what this is? Is that what we're seeing? And then, chose to go to Michigan State, which not always the most freshman-friendly context playing for Tom Izzo. He's an old school guy who loves his grizzled vets in the Big Ten, and I can't blame him. Big Ten via physical college basketball, and Izzo done very well for a long time. But, Jaren talked so much when he was in Memphis about how important that year was with Tom Izzo, just learning from one of the best that college basketball has to offer. Thinking back to that 2018 draft, I had Luka number 1 and I had Jaren number 2. And Jaren doesn't go number 2 in a redraft, but
same here.
Yeah, but right. He won't go number 2 in a pre-draft, but or redraft, excuse me. But he is definitely going ahead of Ayton, and he's definitely going ahead of Marvin Bagley. And that was the two things I'm sure you remember well, having to really fight the people that were pro Ayton, pro Bagley, and it, I don't want to turn it into I was right and they were wrong, because I was wrong about plenty of stuff in that draft. But
right, that's the draft. But that was one of the fun debates. Was just that was one of my favorite drafts and draft debates for all those reasons. You had Mo Bamba, another unicorn type guy that didn't quite pan out the same way that. That was kind of who I was referring to earlier, but had a lot of similar tools, similar numbers, similar impact things. And there were just some things along with, maybe work ethic or consistency and showing up on the court a little more often in that way that Jaren showed up. But, go on.
Yeah. So I just remember having those discussions. I think, when the Grizzlies drafted him, I was very happy because, not only had I been a big fan, but it was such a pivotal time for the Grizzlies. This was the very end of the grit and grind era. probably not a lot of people remember, but Jaren played his entire rookie season with Mike Conley and the first half of it with Mark before he was traded at the deadline. Randolph was gone, Tony Allen was gone. And so this was a complete page turn. And, I really thought this is a guy that you can build around, because at that time, the Warriors and 3-point shooting was such a big thing. And here comes this 6'11" guy who blocked everything at Michigan State and had incredible touch indicators and was willing to shoot threes. And it's like, whoa, did they find one of the rare unicorns that has, typically dominated the history of basketball? This was the current evolution of size plus shooting plus defense. And so, yeah, like it was, I think a lot of Grizzlies fans were disappointed. I went back before we got on and pulled it up. If you go back and look at Jaren's conference tournament and then NCAA tournament, he was really bad. He was awful in their second round. They got upset by Michigan State. Sure, you remember it. That was a great Michigan State team. Excuse me, they got upset by Syracuse. I think they said they got upset by Michigan State. But yeah, got upset by Syracuse. It was, Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson, Xavier Tillman, Cassius Winston, like really good team. And Jaren, in that second round game, he played 15 minutes. He only scored 2 points. He fouled 3 times. It was everything that like people get frustrated with Jaren about, right? Couldn't stay on the floor, wasn't really scoring, just wasn't impacting the game. And so I think that left a really sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And, thankfully, one NCAA tournament game is not an indicator of what you're going to be like in the NBA. But man, and we can, talk more about this. I don't want to take up all the time here, but like seeing what he was at Michigan State and what we thought he was going to be to ultimately where we are now, is he's really entering the prime of his career, from maybe a 3-and-D center to now one of the most dominant mid-range scorers in the NBA, who on a heavy self-created diet. It's astonishing what he's been able to do in his 8 years in the league, man. It's been a joy to watch, and a guy I'll miss watching every night for the Grizz.
Absolutely. Like he's fully seen that development arc go from like the promise to fulfilling it on both ends. And like you highlighted a lot of his strengths. And I mean that fundamental like footwork and touch in the post and mid-range shooting like really unlocks his game as like a play finisher, to go with the threes and the pump fakes and driving off of those, attacking closeouts off of that, and obviously defensive instincts. I think it's so something like Russell Westbrook, in the sense of the 90-10 rule that has been referenced before with him, where like you just kind of put up with some of the faults. Like there's so many blocks and deflections and steals, like the actual number of fouls isn't really the problem. It's just like the foul trouble. So to me anyway. So like if you can kind of like figure out, like you either like don't bench him, because there's that the take that like you're benching, you're just benching him yourself by benching him early, so just kind of play him through it anyway and let him just, he's smart enough as a defender to be aware of that, what's going on. So, and like probably gets a little respect from the refs to maybe not get fouled out too quick, but who knows with that. But he's just a smart defender, but he still racks up those fouls, so he gets the foul trouble. The rebounding, I always kind of credited to his archetype, like what he does elsewhere. Like he's just in different spots on the floor, and like people like chalk it up to like, big man should just be grabbing 12 rebounds. It's like he's blocking shots, he's stretching the floor from 3, he's versatile, so he's out on the perimeter guarding. I don't really think of him as like a strong rebounder as much as all those other things. So like that's another thing where you can also like build lineups to kind of put some strengths around him that he might not have. Like he might be best as a stretch 4, in my opinion. Like he showed with Steven Adams, Zach Edey, like these big rim rollers, rim protector, rebounder types, like traditional guys. They can have a mean pick and roll, like double combo together, and also they can kind of do the dirty work while he does the stretch 4 stuff. That's just, but obviously has the stretch 5 capability, and that's what makes him so lethal mismatch wise. So there's just, a ton to like, and a ton. I think he was kind of, acquired at a buy low 2 pick cost for Utah. I think a few years, anytime before this kind of desperation point for Memphis, it probably would have been 3 or 4 picks for this guy that has all this like kind of unicorn type potential, just kind of because where they felt stuck they felt against the wall. It almost felt like they didn't move Memphis because of how bad the returns we're getting for him, that they're just like, we'd rather just wait a few months. That was something I was going to ask. Do you think there's any chance that, they hold on to Ja through all this after a few more months? Or is this just like kicking the can down the road until like somebody finally offers a pick?
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised if there's a reconciliation there. I think that the second that Shams tweet went out that the Grizzlies were listening to offers, that it was going to be, I don't want to say impossible, but the odds were stacked against them bringing him back. And, I think to the Grizzlies' credit, they've stood behind Ja and what's been, a tough 3-year stretch. The first few years of his career were great, looked like this up and coming team that was going to be a contender in the West. And then, Ja, whether it be, some of the off court stuff that is self inflicted or the injury stuff. And the frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of people is like, it's never been a catastrophic thing, right? He's never torn his ACL. He's never torn his Achilles. He's never had some freakish leg break or anything crazy. It is just these like, oh, he pulled a hammy, that's going to be 3 weeks. Oh, his shoulder got sprained, that's going to be a month. It's these like small nagging things that just seem to add up to where he can never play, or at least not play enough to make it worth a max contract and a guy you feel comfortable building your entire infrastructure and team around. Because, the thing is with Jaren or a guy like Dez, those guys are so malleable. They can fit into so many different team contexts, offensive schemes, defensive schemes. Ja, you got to make a commitment to build around Ja. And you have seen, like, this guy can go nuclear. He's had comfortably the best games in the history of the Memphis Grizzlies when he's gone for 40 plus in the playoffs multiple times. Grizzlies have never had anything like that. It's not like we have the history of a bunch of Lukas or a bunch of Jokic's or LeBrons or Jordan. Like the playoff history is the grit and grind stuff, getting swept with Pau Gasol, and then what we saw with the Ja, Jaren, Dez guys, right? So seeing what Ja did, yeah, the Grizzlies gave him every opportunity to fix the body, to fix the off-court stuff, and unfortunately, it just hadn't worked out. And so, they got the picks for Dez. They got the 3 first, plus, they're seemingly pretty interested in Walter Clayton for Jaren. I didn't think the Jaren return blew me away or anything. But the one thing I would say there is Jaren, he's got the extension kicking in. So a little bit easier to trade right now when he's in the mid to high 30s versus that this summer when the calendar flips, he's getting closer to 50 million. So they probably just took what they thought was the best offer there and said, you know what? We got a few picks. We got an interesting young guy in Walter Clayton. We're already blowing this thing up. Let's take what we can get and let's move on. And I assume they don't want to pay to get off of Ja because they have the leverage. They have 2 years left on Ja's contract. There's no need to dump money. They don't have really any bad contracts. They're not in any sort of situation where they just need to get off the money. So they're probably just waiting around. Someone will take a bite of at least neutral value and maybe not treat him as a negative asset. So, but ultimately, yeah, to answer your question, I think it's over. And it's just a matter of time before Ja is playing for another team.
Sad to see. I mean, I was.
It is.
You might have seen my face light up. I was bringing up my Grizzlies SI article on because you mentioned Ja Morant's explosive games and the London game came to mind. He just right after the big Berlin game where the Magic kind of had the big dunk with Anthony Black and a blowout there, kind of came out flat in London the next game, and Ja Morant just I think it was his first game back after a little injury stretch too, and 24 points, 13 assists, 5 boards, a steal, 3 threes, 70% true shooting, plus 26 on the plus minus, just doing what he wants. When he's feeling it, he's still just like that, ball on a string, yo-yo type handles, and just a really exciting player. So it stinks the way that he's kind of covered and the way he's viewed that way, because I think that has a lot to do with it. Is this negative connotation just sticks with how the media covers him. I don't think he's constantly doing stuff that deserves this level of stuff. It's more like a handful of things that have just kind of stuck around, and I think that's led to it. Do you think that Jaren maybe read the room at that Shams tweet and maybe asked out for a place for Utah or something like anything like that, or was this totally just Memphis blowing it up?
It would. So the few
They're
things
just
that I've heard,
speculating. Reckless,
yeah,
reckless speculation, as they like to say. Shout out to
exactly.
Eleventh Art Show.
I don't want to come off as like I'm a sources guy or anything because I'm not. That would be misrepresenting it. But essentially, what I had kind of gathered is that Jaren enjoyed his time in Memphis and would never come out and say that he would prefer to play somewhere else. But that once the Ja thing was headed the direction it's ultimately going to end up, that he wanted some clarity on the franchise's direction of like, hey, is this going to be like, are you trying to get a guy for Ja that we can go and try to win? Because I'm 26 and I'm starting to enter my prime, and I'm not really interested in hanging around for a 3 or 4 year rebuild. And so I think they did right by him by taking a pretty good offer and then sending him to really, a good situation in Utah with like Markkinen and Kessler and Ace and like, you know, their timeline is to win is much quicker than what the Grizzlies are planning the next few years. So, I don't think it was like an ask out situation or anything. But what I would say is I don't think Jaren, like strictly from a basketball perspective, was upset about leaving the Grizzlies and going to Utah.
Yeah, like you could tell like Jaren was pretty excited as soon as he got there. Like it just stood out compared to like Anthony Davis, where there's these reports that like maybe he wasn't so excited about another trade without necessarily involving him in the decision. So sometimes, that was kind of what I was getting at is he has kind of earned the respect of the franchise to at least do right by him, like not to screw him over with a deal just to squeeze an extra pick out of some other team in negotiation. Like normally these teams don't do it that hardball as much as like a 2K franchise GM might, look for that extra pick and not worry as much. Like Utah's one of those places, like if Jaren wants to be there, it'll be a great franchise for him for all those reasons, like the basketball, the shooting with Will Hardy, Markkinen, and Ace that you mentioned, the top pick coming. Like we were just talking with Charlie about on the last pod. They need a little playmaking somewhere. Maybe Fleming's in this in the draft. That could be a fun pick. Maybe we hit on some guards later that maybe land there because they could be involved. But in terms of Jaren Jackson Jr. in Memphis, what did he, mean to the city and just the fans in that point? Because, and like you mentioned to start off the pod, he's the last player remaining from the grit and grind era. So he is officially kind of that torch bearer from his rookie season with the grit and grind through the era with Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, and, now this new era, to Cedric Howard and Zach Edey and Jalen Wells and who knows from there.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that because I think that even beyond the basketball fit, I think Jaren was an incredible person in Memphis. He comes from some of the best people you'll ever meet, and obviously Jaren Jackson Sr. and then his mom, who is very involved in the WNBA and incredibly successful in her own right. And they raised a heck of a human being, man. I mean, this guy, anytime that they needed to hand the microphone to someone at the FedEx Forum to address the crowd, whether it's opening night or before a playoff game or whatever, they gave that microphone to Jaren, right? And I think that maybe surprised some people because Ja Morant is the guy, right? He's the guy with the shoe and a bunch of fancy Nike marketing stuff. But Jaren was always the voice of the franchise. He was constantly out in the community. He was always, Memphis is it's a city with its troubles. And I think that Jaren got out in some tough neighborhoods and really wrapped his arms around it. And I've always said that Memphis is a place that if you love it, it'll love you back twice as hard. And I think Jaren realized that very quickly. And so it's a huge loss for the city beyond just basketball. So it's a real bummer. And I think that Utah, I'm very jealous of Utah fans now because they get that guy not only on their basketball court, but in the community. So, just like I could wax poetic about the human being and the basketball player he is for a long time. The one thing I kind of want to say that you touched on a little bit earlier was, people, I think at times with Jaren, he's a fairly I think, good basketball player because they see 6'11" and they're like, all right, well, why is this guy not getting 10, 12 rebounds every single night? Part of that reason, we could be honest with it, it took his body a very long time to develop. I mean, you go back and look at a picture of him at Michigan State, it's hilarious. He looks like this gangly, like just arms, bag of bones, kind of like, what in the world is going on here? And now you look at this guy, he's 240 pounds, looks like he's chiseled out of rock, and he's, bumping into Yusuf Nurkic, and Nurkic is going backwards this time now. But beyond that, like, he is one of the best help defenders and roam defenders in the NBA. That's how he won his Defensive Player of the Year, right? He's not going out and locking guys up one-on-one necessarily. He is helping everything. So a lot of interesting like ways that the Grizzlies, Taylor Jenkins specifically, would deploy him is they would kind of stick him on the guy that they needed to hide offensively for the other team, right? So whether it was just a guy standing in the corner or someone that they knew Jaren could help off of at any time, because if Ja got beat or if Dez got beat or if Dailyn got beat, there was this, just long Jaren Jackson arm coming to erase the shot or coming to contest it when it seemed like no one else could get there. And so he is constantly having to compensate for some of the failings maybe of his teammates defensively. And so when you're contesting the shot or you're having to be the guy to run out and close out on a long three, you're not really always in the best spot to go grab a rebound. And he played a lot of his career with Steven Adams and Jonas Valanciunas, and those guys vacuum up a lot of the rebounds. So, I mean, I think that there are times that people just fixate or over-index on some of the weaknesses. You touched on the foul stuff, too. It still drives me nuts to this day, man. I think he's the only Defensive Player of the Year to not get the Defensive Player of the Year whistle. It's like, oh, my gosh, like, we're calling touch fouls on a reigning Defensive Player of the Year. What are we doing?
Right.
But, I love the guy. I'm super happy for him. He'll always have a fan in me, and we'll miss him like crazy in Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, they're not calling those on like Tony Allen back in the day or something.
Come on, Tony Allen used to beat people up.
Let him play a little bit, for sure. Man, Jaren's just one of my favorite prospects. That's why I was excited to do this podcast. One of my favorite players, just to watch and see develop and the full player development. And you hit on a ton of it. I don't know if there's much more to add. Like he's just clearly one of the handful of unicorns in this league to this day. And the Jazz got a steal because he's still just like 26, I think, or so.
Right.
That. He should be entering his athletic prime in theory for the next 4 or 5 years. And, whether it's with Mark Cannon, whether they split him up, whatever it is, like they have their guy, I think, in Jaren. And Lowry has exploded as an all-star in his own right. So, like, will they sell high? Will they unite them and have this, like, funky 7-foot, like, three-point assassin, like, pretty complimentary 4-5 lineup, but they would have played the 3-4, so we'll see. Like they're going to experiment down there, and I like the offense with the 3-4-5 with a rim protector and all that, but I don't know if I like Lowry at the 3 defensively. So it's interesting. If they can,
I want to watch it.
Yeah, it worked against Orlando day one, the first half, and then they pulled everybody. But when they were trying, it was working. That's for sure.
The Jazz have made a couple business decisions as of late to, show us some glimpses of Lowry and Jaren, and then, you'll have to wait till the next game to see it again. So,
right, man. Well, you pretty much hit on everything. Was there any lasting thoughts, kind of here on Jaren that we didn't quite get to? You also wanted to talk a little Bane trade, I think. I borrowed my brother's shirt here. I forgot I had it.
Let's
Bane
go.
Repping, so I'm
That's
repping
awesome.
Bane today. I had to rep it when you mentioned it. I'm like, oh, let me grab the Bane shirt. So had to represent. Yeah. He's been like the steady hand in Orlando because especially with all the injuries, he's been great. But what are kind of like here's a fun thought: should NBA 2K add the Grizzlies team as a 2K team? One of the classic 2K teams. That era we mentioned after Grit and Grind. I'm not sure. Is there another name for it? Just these tough, the Bane, Dylan Brooks and Jaren. What was the nickname for it? I'm blanking.
The Grizzlies called it Next Gen. So right. I don't know. It's not as cool as Grit and Grind.
Yeah, I don't know it, so I don't know that one. But
Yeah.
they are memorable enough as a foursome for me. And was Steven Adams the center for that by then? So I mean that's
Yeah.
a good enough team to me, I think, to get one of these 2K teams. What are you thinking over there?
I think so too. Like even some of the supporting cast for basketball nerds, like DeAnthony Melton and
Oh
Tyus Jones and Kyle Anderson,
yeah, now we're
like
talking slow
they had a
mo.
little something. Yeah, they had a little something for everybody. Yeah,
That was a fun
so
team.
it
And they
was.
had
I
those
would.
Thunder post game huddle vibes with the post game, and anytime there was a celebration on the sideline. And oddly enough, that was another thing. The media just loved to really hate on Memphis while letting they celebrate the Thunder doing the same thing. But they were getting on Memphis for that. Why is the media so mean to Memphis? I'm in Orlando, so I can tell. I can see it. It's that small media bias.
It is, man. It's. I guess the media market size, man. We're not LA and we're not, Miami, so we're
Right.
no good. But I don't know though, because like the
Yeah.
Thunder are doing the same thing, and it's not like Oklahoma City's attracting a whole lot of free agents. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't
I
get
don't
that
know.
one. They were just having fun. They were having fun on the sideline, but there was a lot of toughness to it, and that brings me to Bane. He was one of
Yeah,
these guys. The things that have stood out about Bane immediately are, his what he might lack in individual perimeter defense. That like people will say the trade off from KCP is a downgrade defensively. He makes up for, generally speaking, in like loose ball recoveries, diving for loose balls, effort plays. Like he makes one loose ball diving play, it feels like, every single game. And he's clearly playing team first basketball on both ends. And then obviously offensively, like there's a ton to hit on. What did Bane mean to Memphis, and what did you kind of think about that trade as well, and that era, that team?
yeah, man. I mean, first of all, that team was incredible. I mean, it was. I mean, I think that along with Pau Gasol, that there's an argument to be made that Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson are the two most talented players in the history of the Grizzlies franchise.
Mm.
Pau right there along with them. And so I think that there's so much excitement between those two. And then the emergence of Dillon Brooks is like this interesting wing who kind of just annoyed everybody, played defense, and made us roll our eyes with his 18-foot fallaways. But you dealt with it because he was, the culture guy and defended, the best wing for every team. And then the last guy to join the group was Desmond Bane. And it was such a, like, that was the COVID draft, right? And so you go
Was
back
that
and
the
look at it.
30th pick? Did he
He was
fall to
30.
30? So he fell to
Yeah.
30. I wanted him. He at least stood out to me enough to make my tweet of what if guys. I was like, oh, we got Cole. I'm excited about Cole, but Maxey and Bane. But
Yeah.
I was right. I was right about, not so right about Pokusevsky, who I was also excited about. But hey, one out of three, or one out of three ain't bad. But Bane and Maxey, I wanted in Orlando back then, so I've been a fan of just his toughness, 3-point shooting in general since the draft, really. But for y'all to get him at 30, like you're saying, like not only did he pop, like he's exceeding expectations for a 30th pick.
Oh, absolutely. And like what even to like throw another layer on top of that is so that year the Grizzlies had to convey their first round pick to Boston in some trade that Chris Wallace had made. I can't even remember what the specific trade was. But anyways, they convey their first round pick to Boston, and Boston takes Aaron Nesmith. And Boston actually owned the 30th pick that year, and the Grizzlies gave them, I don't know, a couple second round picks and were able to go up and get Bane at 30. And so Grizzlies fans for years love to just pound our chest and be like, yeah, we pulled one over on Boston. They took
Yeah.
Nesmith. He's turned into a good player, but you used our pick and we took your pick and got a better guy like 16 slots later in the draft. So, yeah, that was a nice little,
That's how it
because look,
works.
Boston has fleeced the Grizzlies about 1,000,000 times in trades. It was really fun to one time pull one over on Boston.
Right.
But look, yeah, I mean, those teams were so much fun. And Desmond Bane just added this element of tough, gritty, like you were mentioning. Like, if a ball's on the floor, here comes a 6'6" muscle hamster diving right on top of it to go get it, And then he's got this, like, I don't think you'd ever really teach your kid to shoot like Desmond Bane necessarily, but it goes in. It's so consistent every single time. It's the same. He barely gets off the ground. And, again, these muscly arms, none of it looks like it should work. And it's so good. And he added the
Right.
element where he takes guys off the ball, attacks closeouts, really good finisher around the rim, especially for a guy who's not really got the athletic pop or the length, but just so crafty in what he can do. And so he added this element that Grizzlies fans have wanted for years, dating back to the grit and grind years, where like we got to have 3-point shooting on the wing because they never had that. And so, yeah, just really excited to get him. But ultimately, for the trade, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, I think the Magic maybe paid like 110 cents on the dollar, and when you're looking at it, you're like, all right, well, we just got swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder. We don't know what's going on with Ja, and frankly, Desmond Bane makes a ton of sense for what the Orlando Magic need to take their next step in their build, right? So, yeah, I think the trade made a ton of sense, but it sucked. I mean, I'd much rather have Desmond Bane in Memphis than some first-round picks and the contract of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. All due respect to KCP, who's been a nice player for the Grizzlies this year. But yeah, I know. I'm curious from your side. Like it's been half a season now. How's everything going with our guys? Orlando taking good care of?
Man, we're trying. We're trying to unlock him, I think, is what it is. Because he's been, I think he has been like the steady hand in the chaos, as I kind of hinted at before. Like there has been a lot of injuries in Orlando, but I think, unless I'm mistaken, he's like one of 7 players that's played every game this season. And
Oh, wow.
the other Magic stars have not. The other stat would be Monday was the first game in 470 something days that the Magic were completely healthy for a basketball game. So, that's the polar opposite there of how much steadiness Bane has brought. So like what's really interesting is like all these picks for Desmond Bane, and we see him, I immediately call him like second best shooter in the league, maybe a little overhyped. But like I'm excited looking at the sets. I'm like, these are 3 years, 4 years of lights out shooting on and off the ball. And he gets here and he really has been the steady hand as a driver. And he's really just been a handoff machine for this offense that really is trying to get to a point of drive and kick offense. And it's getting there. It's just, I really do think health is the biggest thing holding it back from success. We saw it in like a 4-minute stint on Monday night where the small ball lineup with Paolo at the 5 and all these like ball handlers were on the perimeter and they just created a bunch of threes off paint penetration, driving kicks. And that's kind of the end goal, at least of one lineup, I think, with Bane, where it could go. But what I really think the team is trying to still like unlock him as a 3-point shooter, find more looks for him in general. And while a lot of that will come with just kind of general health, like putting him back into more off ball roles, I think is what it will end up doing. Like we saw in that stretch. He's been great driving. He's had like clutch moments. I would say like he kind of was Orlando's all-star like candidate for a 20-30 game stretch there where no one else was really healthy, and he was, putting up numbers. He had some game winners. He had the first game winner against Portland already, just an incredible, like, crazy pull-up 3 shot. And he's slowly, like, being more aggressive. I think he came in, like, not wanting to upset the order and play the like smart point guard role where he was like taking his time, setting up others and like patiently hunting his shot as the game went on. But I've kind of said for a while, like this team just needs him to kind of flip the switch on his like not like aggressive mindset, but just on shooting first instead of passing first. Like this team just kind of needs him to be the spark plug, the outlet, the flamethrower, like the guy you just get the ball out to and he lights it up from deep, whether he's pulling up or catching and shooting, and still work all the drives into that. I think Orlando will be at its best when it, like we've seen them at times, like kind of utilize some of its off-ball snipers like Bane and Suggs and Black they have in the last few games with everyone healthy, just as much as getting downhill, and that will kind of open up everything for the whole team because they want to get to the paint. They're great at drawing fouls and driving. They're not quite great at kicking, but now that they have everyone healthy and shooting and better kind of playmakers and shooters surrounding them, I think all those things will kind of feed into itself. So, Bane has been scalable as like the second star and scorer when everyone's out, and he's been killing it. as an off-ball guy. He finally, I mentioned like him getting more threes. He finally had 10 threes, season high attempts, and season high mix was 7 the other night. And just one big explosion for him. And they said he wanted to try to get 10 more often. That was his new number, because he averaged like 10 takes in Memphis. So like,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. Like, what did you see about his 3-point development in Memphis, especially on the ball? Like, he's probably seen as more of a DN3 prospect, but at some point he was shooting like 40%, 44% from pull-up threes on decent volume for a couple years there.
Yeah, no, he was. And like you spot on where we just thought, okay, 30th pick in the draft, Desmond Bane. I think, the draft community really likes him. And, we'll see kind of what develops here, but we know that what we've got here is a strong, sturdy build guy who should be able to hold up defensively. Although, kind of struggles lateral movement. I think at times side to side stuff, he can be and maybe a half step behind, but he's so physical that if he can, stay in front of guys, the guys are going to have a hard time going past him. And then we all knew about the 3-point shooting. That was the big thing in college, and very early on in his rookie year, it was very evident. All right, this is one of the best shooters that's ever played for the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's very exciting. But then, like, as he keeps going, and as Ja, starts to miss games, and he spends more time on ball, all of a sudden, he's bringing the ball up, and he takes a dribble across half court, and he's pulling up from 3. And he's making like 35, 40% of them. It's like, whoa, I did not know that this was going to be like an on ball, 3-point shot guy where like put him in a pick and roll. And if for some reason someone goes under or the big's too far and drop, he's going to pull up every single time, and he's going to make you pay more often than not. And I don't know if you've picked up on this in his time in Orlando, but one of his nicknames in Memphis was the Flyby King. So if you come at him and you're closing out hard, he'll give you a quick pump fake, watch you scoot right by, and then he'll make the 3 as you go flying past him. So
there you go. Yeah,
there's just there's just so much like depth and nuance to his game that I don't think I fully anticipated, especially just based off his rookie year, because he really was just a spot up shooter for the most part. And as he got more comfortable, I think he started to come out of his shell and really expand his game and feel comfortable. And you would even see at times Ja would pass him the ball, and Dez would maybe look back to him, and Ja would be like, no, man, go. Like, you're awesome on the ball, go. And it was really cool to watch. And, he always had a nice big to screen for him, whether very early with Jonas or later on with Steven Adams, someone that could just shake free, and even, for a very short time with Zach Edey as well. But that's always been a big thing in Memphis is have a screener, not only for Ja, but for Dez as well. And, obviously what you guys have with Wagner and Wendell Carter, you've got plenty of guys who can shake free for Dez. So, the on-ball stuff is fascinating. I think just if I don't know, a criticism, but just something of note is that, when there are times, I think specifically, and you don't want to compare every team to the Thunder just because they're so crazy in how they're able to defend guards. But it was really evident in the playoffs last year that when he has to go up against like ball pressure, when someone is really in his chest, he does struggle on ball, frankly, dribbling the basketball. And so there were times like Ja was in and out of that series and wasn't able to play a ton against the Thunder. And so they were heavily reliant on Dez to create so much. And with, Hassan Wallace and Lou Dort and Alex Caruso and all these guys that they were able to throw at him, it just was like, man, I think that we can now definitively say that Dez is not going to be like a tier 1 creator in a playoff type setting against the elite defenses. But, as long as you have someone to kind of help him, allow him to be the secondary creator or even the tertiary creator, if you've got Paulo and Franz out there, he's way overqualified to do that stuff. So like he's, we just found out, I think, all right, this isn't a primary all the time. This isn't a point guard type situation here.
Right. Yeah, I think those are all like fair things to point out. I think Memphis fans were quick to kind of point out the playoff shortcomings after the deal. That's on the way out. It's you want to just kind of, by the way, that this wasn't up to expectations, but that kind of outlines what it is. I think not every player is like a LeBron James perfect prototype. Some guys
That's
have
right.
some deficiencies, and Bane does a lot of things at an elite rate. And like you said, I think ball handling, maybe individual defense, like that lateral movement, like you said, those can be challenges against other elite players. So like Orlando tries to the system that everyone says like looked nice without Paulo generally worked great because everyone else was involved, but it was nonstop pick and rolls and handoffs. No one was doing any ISO individual creation, and especially in the regular season, you're gonna create a lot of good looks that way, I think. And Bane was doing that. He was a main guy doing that. Like Bane and Franz, Anthony Black, De Silva and Suggs when they were available, just nonstop drives, kicks, off of handoffs, off of pick and rolls. They generally all needed a screen also to score, whereas like Paulo doesn't. He was efficient like in every play type. However, Orlando used him on or off the ball. Even if the jump shot wasn't always efficient, using him was for Orlando in any way that they did. So that was kind of one difference to me, was like that's what could unlock Orlando long term, is that Paulo kind of gives them a little do it all utility ISO individual post up option, downhill, short roll playmaker, mismatch scorer, all these things, whether it's at the 4 or the 5 in like a small ball unit or starting at the 4. But like you said, like what works for Orlando is when everyone's healthy, everyone's just a little overqualified for their role. But if everyone's hurt, then everyone, might be a little underqualified, or might be in a slightly like random role here and there too, where it's it's not exactly what they're expected to do, I think. And so, this is finally the stretch we'll see how they look fully healthy. In terms of Bane, like he's been really reliable driving, finishing, drawing fouls, scoring, passing, running the pick and roll with Wendell, like 2-man game, handoffs with him, all of that. They're finally using him a little more off ball with like flare screens and random like other screens that just to kind of get him moving with a head of steam off the catch. And I think he is finally doing a little more of that shot hunting, like you were mentioning, like looking to kill you with the 3 the moment you go under the screen, the moment like he definitely has more games punishing opponents the moment he's open, because you're totally right with the jump shot too. Like it doesn't look like a natural like Klay Thompson shot you would look up in a YouTube video or something. Like it looks like a shot put from his side, a little bit of a slingshot. Like the muscle hamsters are great. Shout out Doug Martin as well, Tampa Bay Bucks running back. But great nickname for it, I guess. Just because he's so strong out there, but especially for a guard. But it's just it looks different than the normal shot. But like you said, it's literally my favorite player to watch warm up, because it's such a smooth jump shot. Like the guy. Imagine he doesn't miss in the games. Imagine in the warm up, it's literally like nobody's Steph Curry, but this guy is like hitting some wild shots and just making it look as smooth as butter. So I'm sure like getting to see him up close, it was, special as well, along with all these other guys. And, it really is amazing how much he developed and kind of jumped out of the 30th pick there. Any lasting thoughts on Bane there and the Grizz as a whole before we jump to the draft?
No, I am excited to talk about the draft, and I mean this not personally at all, but we in Memphis have been a little bit on we're rooting for our guy Dez, right? But we thought the Suns were going to not be good this year, and so we're very excited to get the Suns pick in this trade.
Oh,
And
right.
now, the Suns are somehow ahead of Orlando in the standings. So technically we'd get Orlando's pick. So like we're rooting for our guy Dez. We hope you do well, but maybe be like play-in good this year. Just give us a solid pick in the team. Not personally, just business,
It's
just
the
business.
ghost. It's the ghost of Grizzlies past. It's Dillon Brooks for Phoenix, right?
Oh my gosh, I know that guy.
He's just he keeps winning. He found out that Memphis would benefit if Phoenix lost, so he's like, oh, not on my watch. Not after that.
Like Booker's missed time, and it doesn't matter. Dillon Brooks scores 40, and they just still win. It's ridiculous, but
it's wild.
all love to Dailyn too, man. That guy is a psychopath in the best way possible. So, but yeah, I'm ready to talk some draft, man. This is I'm excited for this.
I like it. Let's transition. I think we covered everything with the Suggs Bane Magic stuff. I'm really excited just to finally see them healthy because like one last thought on that is like they just really could unlock some two-way versatility with the small ball and also just finally stagger everyone a little better with, just all these guards, all these forwards. Everyone becomes like more of a utility in their role instead of just like being asked to just be an all-star. And some of them like can pop on any given night, but I'm excited to see him kind of how everything lays out because I think we're only really scratching the surface, I guess is what I'm getting at with like it feels like it's going if everyone's patient enough from player to front office to coaching to fans, it could be till next year. But this could still really be special, like combination of players, especially with what Bane brings to the table. And you never know, maybe they do win a playoff series this year, and all this forgiven from the growing pains of the injuries this season. So, Magic fans definitely super excited to see him. Shout out Bane one more time. I got the he's rocking it. He's rocking it. I'm rocking it. There it is. Back to the draft though. To the draft. So we're gonna do potential 2026 NBA draft gems. A couple underrated names here. I was thinking, we'll take a look at maybe the top 10. We'll try to stay away from the top 10 or guys that are projected in the top 10. But there aren't any too many hard rules. We can kind of make them up as we go. We're really looking. If the idea is draft gems, then that really means guys that are not being valued high enough by consensus, by ESPN, by the national outlets, like just a handful of guys that either deserve to be a whole lot higher or even just a few slots higher, depending where they're at. I'll let you go first if anyone comes to mind to pop off the top.
Yeah, I've got a few, but I want to start with one of my favorite guys to watch this year. I enjoyed him last year, Xavier, and that's Dailyn Swain, who's currently at Texas. So Dailyn, I thought had like a pretty good profile and could have come out in last year's draft and probably been, maybe he would have snuck into the late first, but probably a second round guy. He transfers to Texas and it's not really been a good year for Texas, honestly. Like the team context that Dailyn's playing in is just not, it's not good, to be honest with you. But his profile is unbelievable. And you go turn on the tape, and like the tape matches exactly what the sheets are saying, that this is a pretty special prospect. And you combine those two things with the fact that he's 6'8", 230 pounds, and looks to have a 7-foot plus wingspan. I think that Dailyn Swain right now is pretty firmly in my top 10. And I could even see him going as high, for me personally, as 7, 6, somewhere in there, like borderlining on a tier 2 prospect for me right now. And really, it's the combination of the size, the heavy unassisted shot diet, and then just like the crazy statistical indicators that are all over his stats profile. So I don't know where you are on Swain, but I would say the last couple weeks I have really tinkered with like how high is too high for this guy, because I'm really in right now on Dailyn Swain.
Yeah, it's funny you bring him up. Like I really like totally agree. Like the more I think about it, the more I kind of like move him higher. The only thing that is becoming a problem is how dang talented this class is. Like there's a little like there's just a hint of recency bias hitting me, because every other night a freshman scores 30 or 40 points and shows off all the potential that they were once talking about. And there's just a lot of talent. And I don't know, someone mentioned that this class might be like the one of the first ones after like some of the COVID breaks, so maybe it got a little extra talent or extra strength from that. Like it's honestly so deep. I think like prospects should seriously consider just waiting till next year for better value, like across the board, like that is decent advice for anyone other than, I don't know, the top 5 guys that are pretty much locked at the moment, like, because anyone else could probably go top 5 next year. And in terms of Swain, like, you're right. Like, I keep like playing around with it. I'm looking at him top 10 too. Like, I'm playing around with as high as 7 at the moment. Like, and in those talks, like, I think he's deserving of that 6 to 12 lottery range, just based on a lot of the things you mentioned. Pulling up some Cerebro stats, I also thought he was like late first last year as well. Just that kind of like two-way wing. Cerebro has him at that Cerebro puts everyone on a comparable scale just to kind of rank them on a 50 to 100 rating based on scoring, 3-point shooting, playmaking at the rim, type of defensive rebounding, and then general defense, steals and fouls. So with Dailyn Swain, last year at Xavier, he was jumping off the page defensively at 103 DSI with 2.5 steals per game. And he was hitting 50% of his threes, 1.5 makes per game, 58% of his shots, 89 PSP scoring value there with a 12.5 CRAM, like a big impact. And at Texas has kept up the defense, the scoring, not quite the 3-point shooting yet, but he's kind of had enough of a sample last year and before where you kind of buy that the shot can come back. But he's a positive assist to turnover ratio, solid rebounding numbers, and really just it's the big two-way wing scorer type, like guard wing, like whatever position it is. He's on the perimeter. There's just a lot to like there that I think is highlighted both on the stats and like just making winning plays on the court. So I definitely think he's a guy that like might not go top 10, but definitely like could return top 10 value. I don't know. This might be a bad comp by me. You tell me. A little bit of Jalen Williams on the Thunder in terms of the value that he could provide, like maybe and some of the archetype. Like, is there any similarities there, or is that doing too much?
I could see it. I think like Swain, like just from a body composition standpoint, he's a little like thicker than J-Dub on the Thunder. But like from a play style, yeah, like I could absolutely see that. I think J-Dub maybe a bit more juice, maybe like a little more quickness, explosiveness, but like Swain compensates for that with the strength and the size. So yeah, I could see it. Again, I am blown away by how much he has to self-create and then how efficient he is off those self-created makes. He's over 80% unassisted at the rim and finishing 70% of those makes. I mean, that's like center stuff, I mean, that's unbelievable. Right. So, yeah, like if you let me sit here and talk about him more, I'm going to put him like, man, are we sure he's not better than like Caleb Wilson? Yeah, I'm sure Caleb Wilson is better, but yeah, I really like the guy. And I think like one of those that you look back 5, 6, 7 years after the draft, and you're like, yeah, he should have gone, maybe 5 spots higher than he actually did.
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting like one of the better defenders on the wing and he can score,
yeah.
To me, like if you're a plus defender and you have at least one viable ball skill, offensive role, like dribble, you can pass, you can shoot. You feel something offensively that isn't going to kill the offense while you're out there, and they can find a role for you while bringing that defense. Like that's just a huge plus. And he clearly has that with scoring, and he's shown enough with the shooting and the handle and otherwise where I think in the strength where he can kind of round out. You can see the two-way impact very clearly for a guy like that. And I guess what it comes down to with the draft value is like all these other guys and kind of potential that anyone can talk yourself into for so many different of these guys. Like maybe you buy the 3-point shooting of some of these other guards a little more, and that, you lean towards some offense or something. I'm not sure if this is updated. Like ESPN, the December big board has them in the 50s. I mean, I don't know if it's changed since then, but like they have them at 52 in their big board, and I'll have to check in the mock draft. So clearly not getting a ton of love there on ESPN side of things. I know Switch Theory is really high on them. Definitely going to check out Dailyn Swain. I got to go with my first pick.
Yeah.
Ebuka Okorie here. Gotta shout out my guy from the guard draft. Like he's a guy that is one of the leading scorers in college, and it threw up a 40-point game the other night. I got to catch him live, and he like is one of the best in high school and one of the best like rim finishers I really have ever seen as a guard. Like that's what stood out. I really didn't know a ton about him coming in, and I left thinking he was one of the most impressive guards there. Just a cerebral point guard, mind playmaker, a little Schroeder with a little Rondo with his quick first step burst and his just decision making, his finishing, and he made enough of the open threes. And now he's like, scoring at impressing on the other end of the floor as well. I think with even more so at the college level as a bucket getter. There's some concerns about his size at the next level, and I get that. So like, I'm not sure if he will. I'm not really sure how high I have his potential yet, but I do have him top 10 at the moment. I just love everything about his game. I have him 6, right above Swain. I think they're both like, I'm still in the mix of moving some guys around. I think we'll get to some guys who I'm going to end up a lot higher, like in this range. So I might shuffle a little bit, but they're definitely in that top 12 range for me. Not sure if you're quite that high on him or have caught him play much, but he's a fun player. Any thoughts on Okorie?
Yeah, he is a very fun player. I think I've seen him play twice, so I don't want to sit here and act like I've done the deep dive and give you the full spiel on him. But like the stuff that stood out to me is like he's on the ball a ton and he's an efficient scorer. So like the volume, the efficiency, really solid. The free throw numbers are great, like really good touch stuff, great assist to turnover. Like I'm just kind of looking at his profile right now too. Like, yeah, I think the fascinating thing is like the anthros, like how tall is he actually? How long is he? Looks like a really good athlete, kind of shifty, like able to create the separation. There's a few things that the couple times I've seen him play. So I don't have him ranked yet just because I haven't done my full dive. But man, anytime you've got a freshman putting up 40 and that deserves a very
Right.
long look to make sure that this isn't like a star bet in the draft.
Right. Yeah. No. That's it right there. Pulling up his Cerebro numbers puts it on a nice comparable. Sometimes just looking at some of these, but he's got a high defensive number in 86 DSI, 1.6 steals to only 1.5 fouls. He's got solid playmaking and 3-point shooting with 3-point assists to 1.6 turnover, like you said. 32% from 3 on 2 threes. Not amazing, but has shown some indicators with 3-point shooting and free throws before that, I think, and scoring lights out. Like we said, like one of the league college leaders in scoring. I think he was 4th last time I checked in all players in D1. He's got 32% usage, like you said, and like still maintains some efficiency. So another really elite defender, quick burst, can score, can shoot, can play make. Like he can dribble, pass, and shoot, run the offense, defend like crazy. Like you highlighted it, is he big enough for the league? Like I think that's really all this is really going to come down to. And there are definitely plenty of 6'2" players that are so talented offensively that can maybe hold their own or be a part of a team defense, or maybe they still get picked on, but they're so good it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of his outlook, and that is maybe where like worst case floor of a Schroeder kind of comes to mind for some of the comps that like first time I saw him, that was the guy that came to mind. But I've seen guys throw like, maybe every time there's a good finisher, the name Kyrie gets thrown out, but he is a great finisher at the rim. So that is like, to me, his special skill is stuff like that quick burst to create the space, create the separation, the finishing at the rim, and just that cerebral playmaking mind, like making winning plays, like in his sleep, the way Rondo would, in a way where like you, without even trying, just like gets a deflection, an extra possession, and a layup for without even like understanding how he did it, kind of thing. So just a fun player, smart player as well to keep an eye on. Another guy that I don't think was very high, at least on this one, not even listed on the December one. I'll see if I can find a more updated one, but he might not be on that level of draft talks yet. Let's go with a just back and forth draft here. Who do you got with your next guy?
Next guy is a a little bit of a deepish cut, but he's started to kind of come up in some draft, more mainstream draft conversations. Is Allen Graves,
Oh,
who's
great choice.
I don't know. Have you gotten a chance to see him at all yet?
So I haven't caught the tape yet, but I've talked to his
Okay.
coach. I've got to see the stats. I'm into the Allen Graves business. I'm getting into it, and I'm looking into more only because like his stats really jumped off the page when they came. You tell me more about him because he's tell me what I need to know because and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. The one thing that stood out to me stood out to his coach was he plays tough. He plays kind of
Yeah.
like Noah Penda, who is another who is a player from France on Orlando that we were talking about at the time. So plays tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just like a pretty rare mix of like strong and incredible processing basketball IQ and then a motor that just kind of never stops running. Like the tape is so much fun. It's fascinating too that a guy who is not really playing in a power conference, who comes off the bench, is in NBA draft talks. But he is. That's just how wild the impact has been. Like anytime you're running any sort of like a functional processing or athleticism or anything like that, some sort of proxy query on Bart Torvik, Allen Graves pops up every single time. So I'm like, all right, who is this guy? Like, I gotta watch him. And he's just a joy. Like he probably has a little too much weight on his frame right now. So I think he could kind of tone up, but like he uses it to his advantage. Like he's not the biggest guy, but anytime there's a shot, you will see him just like slowly kind of positioning his lower body to get leverage and to just carve out enough space for the man that's trying to box him out to where he's got the rebound and he's there to stick it back or find an open teammate. Really fun passer. Creates tons of offense for himself. I think he's the only player in Division One with a 5 block and 5 steal percentage. Like it's just like
Crazy.
comical how good this guy his profile is and then how much fun it is to watch on tape. Kind of got like a little bit of a funky jump shot. I'm not sure that he'll ever be a great 3-point shooter, but he's 38% right now on relatively low volume. And he's an okay free throw shooter, right around 70%. If there's a big knock on him, it's that, and I'm pretty sure this is the reason he doesn't start, is he just fouls a ton. Like he's really struggles to stay in the game, frankly. And I think some of that is like just getting his body right and being able to not have to reach out so much defensively, because the processing and all that stuff is there to me. Like he understands what's going on. It's just, can his body keep up with his mind? And I think like that only adds to the upside of what could be with Allen Graves. So like if he maybe is not a 2026 guy, but if he is, I would not let him get out of the first round, because if you put him in the right development system, I think that this is a really exciting player. And a little bit reminds me of a guy that you have in Orlando, and Noah Penda, who was a big fan, had a lot of fans in the draft as well. I am fascinated by Allen Graves and really excited to watch as he kind of continues to develop here the next few years.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to share thoughts and of actually seeing him play and add some perspective there. The stats I had shared earlier from Avi at 100 guaranteed in conference play, Allen Graves has a 13.3 BPM, which is 6th in the nation. His combo of 18% offensive rebounding, 2.7 assists to turnover, 5% steal, 5% block, like you mentioned, is utterly unprecedented.
Unbelievable.
Is what he said. I mean, that's a pretty mean combo of just instincts, I think, is what the stats really try to highlight, and what those instincts can really lead to as a basketball player and decision maker on all things: rebounding, passing, stealing, forcing turnovers, deciding how to make winning plays beyond scoring. In that sense, I think is really what it highlights. So just one of those, like, just from his profile, comes off as one of those winning role player type floors that, if there's any kind of potential with the ball skills, could really turn into something special if you add up all that other stuff. But especially just as a closeout attacking 3-point shooter, could slide right into, the league just as a role guy. It seems like just off his stat profile. But obviously got to, see a little more tape, like you said, he could easily get drafted a lot higher next year if he waits, but just because of how much talent is already known about this year, it's going to be like an uphill battle in that sense. But like he's already, making the case for himself, and it doesn't take much more than like, a few games to get on the radar and draft Twitter radar to, obviously the league's radar. Doesn't take that much to really kind of get thrown into the mix. So like, he's doing what he needs to at Santa Clara, putting up the stats. Shout out to Coach Allen as well, over there and what they're doing. So, excited to see his development, and, any team that takes him is going to be lucky to have him, like you said, especially, in terms of just looking for value in the draft. Like if you're able to get him a little later, like that's going to be great value for the pick, even with all this talent. So that's how great this class is. And to double check, I found the latest mock draft. Swain is up a little bit. He's up to 47th to the Raptors. So we got him up a little, but not enough. And no mention of Okorie or Graves on ESPN's mock or big board. So, we're trying to help him out here, trying to put a few names here,
we're trying to be market movers, man. This podcast drops and all of a sudden these guys are lottery picks. You never know.
You never know, man. You never know. I want to shout out some top 10 guys real quick, like Kingston Flemings. I think he's number 5, like to me at least, and like has a case for like number 4, really, but we'll see if he makes that case. I think it's like a 5-player draft is where we're getting to, but we'll see if we get there. But I really think he's that special, and that's the only real like gem idea is that like he's not considered top 4 level quite yet. But like I don't know, he's doing enough for me. But I know there's a lot to come up for a guard. But another guy that like would probably go top 3 in other years is we were saying on ESPN, there's one other guy. Mikel Brown Jr. is projected to go 5th here. He was a guy that, I don't know. I feel like this might be a little bit of a late rise for him, but he's just an incredible 3-point shooter. And we're coming off like a 40-point. I don't even know how many threes for him. Like, was it 10? Was it 7?
10, yeah.
Was it 10? Man, like 10, just insane. Because I saw a couple of them, like just not even hitting the rim, just nothing but net, just insane shooter. So a guy like I thought about mentioning, but like I don't think he's going to be a gem or under the radar anymore. Like I think he's probably just going to go top 10 because of the shooting at guard. Do you think he's kind of walked his way into that status?
I think so. To be honest, I think there was a lot of Mikel had a lot of fans because he's been kind of in and out for Louisville all season. He's really struggled with some injuries and stuff like that. But the mocks never really pushed him beyond like maybe late lottery. And all it took was one really awesome game. They're like, all right, yep, come on back, Mikel. You're right back in the top 10. You go look at like his high school profile and stuff, like just insane volume 3-point shooter and makes a ton of them, and really good passer too. So like, this draft, if you're a team that is in need of point guard assistance, I have got a lot of great options for you in this draft, and he's just one of them. It's that really, really happy to see him healthy and playing like the guy that I think everyone knew he could be dating back to his high school days.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like he's had this shooting profile a while, and he's back in those talks, and I think he'll stay in those talks as a guard that can light it up like that. Nate Ament is top 10 in the big board and the mock draft for them. I would have thrown him in here as like a late first, kind of early, maybe mid first kind of value pick, but maybe he'll work his way back up as well. To this status. I think he's kind of bounced around the first round. Another guy with a lot of potential, some clear ball skills for his height, 7 foot, 3 like with a tough to block jump shot. But it took a little while to come on, but has been playing well in conference play with Tennessee. So that's a guy that could have value if he ends up falling a little bit in the draft. I'm going to go with my next pick. I'm going to go with Chris Cenac, another guy that, is kind of bouncing around the first round a little bit in terms of where he's being projected. But he was like MVP of the top 100 camp when I caught him in person. He was showing off all the skills like there, like just really incredible defender instincts, 3-point shooter, some ball skills. Like I've said before, a little Chris Bosh to his game in that sense. Maybe last year, like Asa Newell kind of has some of that skill set where just some rebounding instincts and defensive instincts, some 3-point shooting, rim rolling. But Cenac also can do it with the ball. Like he can post you up a little bit, back you down a little bit. He can score. So very much a modern big man, I think, just kind of sitting there. And he's come along for Houston a little as the team goes on, playing with Flemings and JoJo Tugler, another strong defender there who could also bring some value late in this draft.
Yep.
I think is a good little mix for them, and I think it's going to be a good experience the rest of the way for him. He's a guy that I think, if he doesn't work his way back into lottery talks, could very well provide, late lottery type value later in the draft if he's still around. And might, maybe around 12 to 15 is where he ends up kind of going, or where that's probably where I'll end up having him. But I because of the late start, I had him down into about the 20s. After the college start so far. But I'm very open to kind of fluctuating, especially with just how deep this class goes. Like there's going to be some names like it's going to be too hard to keep out of the top 10, and you just got to bump somebody down, and that's how these big boards work. And it's different for every team, but in a general list sense, this is how we're going about it. Thoughts on Chris Cenac?
Yeah, he's like his conference stuff has been awesome. I think he had almost kind of I don't want to say fallen out in the first round necessarily, but it was a slow start, similar to another guy you were mentioning, Nate Ament, who turned it on a ton in conference play. But yes, he's been really good. The rebounding numbers are obviously very impressive. I wish he was a little bit more of a shot blocker, but that's I guess beggars can't be choosers for all this stuff. Like some of the stuff is you have to contextualize it of the offensive system, the defensive systems that they're playing in, and who Senac's playing with. Like JoJo Tugler is obviously a tremendous rim protector, especially for someone his size. It speaks to like what someone like Kingston Flemings has done, where Sampson maybe not always the guy who's willing to trust freshmen a ton, and I think it took Cenac quite a while to earn that trust from Kelvin Sampson, and he started to unleash him here in conference play. And I've pulling it up now. He's got a 12.2 BPM in 11 conference games. Like it's pretty special stuff for a freshman, regardless of team context. So. I think that's a great shout. He's been playing some really good ball.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Definitely special rebounder, and that high point he gets, offensive rebounding. I think definitely, some special like skill, maybe standout skill for him. Would you? You have any other guys you want to highlight here? Some gems.
One more quick guy for you here.
I like it.
Guy that I liked. I kind of liked last year. Again, I thought he could have come out last year and been like a sleeper type pick. Morez Johnson at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, we all know about Yaxel Lindenborg. He's been great. Ade Mara certainly has his fans in the draft. He's a giant, frankly, with quite a bit of skill. But Morez is the guy that I have really gravitated towards of that Michigan team, who I'm fascinated to see play in the NCAA tournament because their bigs are just so good, and their guards are pretty good, but their guards aren't typically what you see on like a national title team. So really interested to see how that goes for him in March. But Morez, like, first of all, the guy just finishes everything. I'm not sure that like at the next level, he'll ever be any sort of creator, but the efficiency with which he puts the ball in the bucket just cannot be ignored. He's 71.3 true shooting, 68.4 effective field goal percentage. He's shooting 75.8% at the rim on 132 attempts so far this season. He really just finishes everything. And on non-rim twos, he's 44.1%. So, like, you just start there and you're like, all right, we've got a 6'9" guy who's well-built and got really long arms who finishes everything. The rebounding numbers are fantastic. Solid rim protector, takes care of the ball. And then he's shooting 80% on free throws this year too. So like the touch is clearly there for him, not just around the basket, but he doesn't take threes. He's taken 13 in his entire college career. So there's not much of a sample to work off of at all. But maybe between the free throw shooting and the otherworldly finishing outside, at the rim and non-rim twos, like maybe at some point he stretches it out. But even if he doesn't, I just think that this is going to be a 10-year NBA role player who's going to affect winning basketball throughout his career. So I've really gravitated towards him and would be pretty comfortable taking him inside the top 20.
There it is. ESPN has him in the 40s on both the big board and the mock. So you give us some real value here. You're nailing the value picks. I think and I'm like cheating basically because Cenac, it looks like his lottery on both of these. So I thought he was kind of falling a little bit, but they still have him around that 12 to 18 type range for Cenac so far. So good. And same for Ament. So I'm very. I'm happy that they're still in that status and interested to see kind of where they end up kind of valued, because I definitely think those are both kind of like very, not mystery box, but very wide ranges of kind of potential, I guess, where you could, there's a little bit of star potential. There's a little bit of starter. Is it more of just a role player when it all said and done at the next level? Like you could see a lot of different things play out, but Morez is a good shout. Michigan just keeps rolling these big men into the NBA. It's kind of wild when it comes to that. I need to shout out at least Brayden Burries here. I think he's a guy that it probably could have some value as like he might fall to like 12th and then be an all-star all of a sudden because he's a scoring creator, offensive engine, decision maker that, just going back to some past podcasts we've had and talked to him about kind of his high school days. But he's he's for a shooting guard for Arizona. He can shoot, he can pass, he can dribble, he can score and create. Very, very nice, like, offense to him. But there's so many guards in this class that he might not go that high at all. He's projected 41st on the big board for ESPN. But he's another guy that's popped out a little bit. He's moved up to 30th on the recent mock draft from them as well. But he's a guy he's had some good games as well recently. I mean, there's just a ton of freshmen kind of popping out, coming along slowly. And I mean, these guys are young freshmen in college, developing quickly. Like, all of that is impressive, and they're doing it on a big stage. So it's hard to judge these guys too quickly for quick spurts in college, especially when they're all like big profile guys that have proven it on the other stages. So you don't want to like overreact. But have you had any thoughts to Burries kind of coming along this so far and maybe where he could end up in the draft stock wise?
Yeah, real quick. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is he your favorite Arizona prospect, or do you like any of the other guys more? Because I think he might be mine.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite. I mean,
Okay.
Color Pete, I probably have a little lower at the moment, just due to he's another guy where like he was on Team USA. He clearly has some athleticism and potential as like this big time athlete, but I've just seen more kind of all around game from Burries. I think just more good basketball skills that you're looking for at the next level off the in this range. And if you going on raw potential, then maybe you go with Koa there. But I think where the draft process is starting to lean a little bit more towards as few like flaws as possible, like as many skills as possible, dribble, pass, shoot, and defend, and be able to like show it already and be realistically develop all those things. And Burries has a lot of that, I think. But there are a lot of guards to kind of look through. But what do you like about Burries?
Yeah, like just the efficient scoring. First of all, like he's a great finisher around the rim. The non-rim two stuff is awesome. 47% on 63 attempts. Just like that's fantastic. And then the 38% on over 100 3-point attempts is good. He's another one who I think we're seeing a trend with some of these guys that we're talking about is like the step up once conference play has started, which is really a good sign because, oftentimes you look through profiles and you go back and watch clips and watch games, and you see guys who maybe feast early on some of the lesser competition early in the season, and then maybe tail off as the season goes on. They get into conference play, they start to play the top 100 quality teams, and it falls off a little bit. And that's not been the case with several of these guys we mentioned, and Burries is no different. So I don't think he's a one. I think he's more of an off-ball guard. Um, and so, like, a little question, like, size-wise, how does that work? I don't know. Like, can you see him being a point guard, or you think he's kind of more off-ball, complementary, secondary creator guy?
Yeah, a little more of a combo, I guess, in that sense. Like, I think he can kind of run your offense, but he's more of a score first guy. So if you're running it through
Yeah.
him, like it's to score, but like long term, maybe has that creator point guard vision to kind of round out the full shot creator for the team, good decision maker, kind of like letting him initiate, score, threaten to score, and then create for others. Like I could see him kind of, that's why where the value I think is here is kind of betting on that coming together
Yeah.
as an all around scoring threat, I guess. But yeah, it is still kind of score first and play make out of that. And there's just a ton of names to highlight. I mean, just to run through some guys that we don't have to talk a ton about, but if you have any thoughts on anyone, feel free to give them a shout. But Matt Abel, Miles Bird, Dante Allen, I like a lot. Caden Lewis, Malik Thomas. Shannon Babe hasn't played a ton, but he's a guy that is really skilled. Todd Pettiford was really high on last year, really explosive this year, and some other guards, Jalen Petty, Rob Wright, to kind of round out some thoughts. But there's Christian Anderson, Caden Boozer, Tega Owe, Tunde Yesufu, just a whole lot of guys, and kind of that. I guess I'm looking at my first round. Just most I think are a little higher than most, but anyone there that you think could provide some value in the draft?
Definitely Christian Anderson is a guy that's always kind of interested me. It's just like kind of a freaking Human Torch scoring guard who also can pass a little bit, and that's really fun. Tega Owe is a guy that I have tracked really since his Oklahoma days. He's just like really, really tough physical defender. Like some of the offensive stuff just hasn't quite materialized as much as you'd want. But if you look up and he's had an 8-year NBA career, I wouldn't be surprised. I actually was very, very interested to see Owe and Nate Ament match up, because I think one of the big questions with Ament is like the body's got to fill out, the core strength, the lower body strength's got to fill out. And I promise you, Otega Owe is going to push that every single time, because he is strong as an ox and just plays so physical. And Ament had a really nice game against him. And so that I was like, okay, I guess Ament is really making this leap, because Owe, again, maybe not a long-term NBA player, but like from a physicality standpoint, that's what Ament's going to see when he gets into the NBA. And I thought he acquitted himself very well. So, a couple guys definitely that stood out there.
Yeah, a great point. Otega reminds me a little of, like we mentioned, Tony Allen before, like little KCP before, like just these stout defender types. But Otega's a really strong big wing, so it is nice to see Ament handle that like close up ball pressure as a tall shooter that a lot of guys will have problems with that exact type matchup at the next level. So it's good to see that. Definitely some gems here, man. Some potential 2026 NBA draft gems. We're going with Dailyn Swain, Ebuka Okorie, Allen Graves. Shout out Nate Ament and Chris Cenac. I don't know if they count. Yep. We're gonna count them. Morez Johnson, Brayden Burries, and all the other guys that we mentioned here. Definitely some interesting names. And thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you taking the time to just talk about Jaren, the Grizzlies, Bane, the era, and all things draft, man. But always fun talking hoops. Thanks for taking the time today, Chip.
Ton of fun anytime. Really appreciate it. You're very gracious to have me on and let me wax poetic about the Grizzlies and the NBA draft, which are like the only things I ever talk about. So this was awesome, man. I had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here, man. It was a lot of fun. Always fun talking hoops and talking the draft. Everyone got to check out @Chip Williams Jr. for his NBA draft scouting and film breakdown, some great perspective on the Grizzlies, the draft, and NBA, and definitely think these are some names to watch for the draft. So this was a fun one. Thanks for taking the time today, Chip. It was a lot of fun. Hope you have a good one.
Thanks, you too, man.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from beyond the arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.